So thanks everyone for joining today's webinar. I'm gonna start sharing my screen here in a second, but it's nice to meet everyone virtually. I'm James Gibson. I'm one of the solutions account managers here at JASCI. We also have Joe Rist on the line. Joe, would you like to make an introduction to everyone?
Yeah, hey, great to meet everybody. And welcome back. If you've seen some of our other webinars, I'm Joe Rist, the Director of Solution Sales, and I'll be driving us through this webinar on slotting and putaway today. So I hope you all enjoy it.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe.
Mhm.
So everyone should be able to see my screen here, I believe. So today's webinar, and happy Friday, everyone. Today's webinar is going to be going over slotting and putaway, right? So today we'll be discussing Jesse's slotting options and the difference between static and dynamic slotting within Jassy, as well as our putaway screens, right? Our system-driven putaway screens. So Joe's going to take you through a short presentation as well as some screens in the environment itself. And without further ado, Joe, I'll hand things over to you.
Sure. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. James, if you could just confirm that that's sharing.
Let me stop sharing first. Yep, I can see your screen.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be jumping back and forth between the system and this presentation because with slotting, there's a lot of things to explain. So first, we'll just cover what is slotting, and that's going to be the process of determining the optimal location for each SKU within a warehouse. The aim is to reduce the travel time, to reduce the amount of labor, and increase your pick efficiency. So that's what slotting is going to do for you is it's going to aim to improve the labor within your warehouse and then also remove the need for someone to be kind of that master of what goes where and reduce, putting that onus on, your team members that are doing the receiving and putaways. So JASCI has to account for that. We have system directed slotting, which means that we are going to be doing the slotting process during the receiving automatically. And then for the user, they're simply going to be scanning the putaway label and being directed to the location that JASCI chose for that inventory to be put away to. So we're going to be during the receiving process, JASCI is going to be analyzing what's been entered about the goods received. It's also going to be looking at what's currently in inventory, what our locations look like, dimensional data, if you have certain SKUs tied to certain locations or to certain areas or not. And there's a lot of other considerations that we're going to talk through today. Now, we mentioned earlier static and dynamic slotting, and I want to talk about the difference between those. So, static slotting is basically going to be that your warehouse is already assigned certain SKUs to certain locations, and the system's just going to go and choose that location every time that you receive that item. And it's still it's still system directing the user to go put it away there. But as far as figuring out where we wanted that put away to occur, the slotting process is very simplistic. It's just looking at the SKU and then finding the location that's married to that SKU. Dynamic slotting is going to be a little bit more complex. It's going to be factoring in things like velocity. It's going to be factoring in your order volume, your current inventory that's out there, mixing and not mixing lots. If you have certain products that you don't want stored near each other, or certain products that you do want stored near each other, location profiles, it's going to be using a lot of those elements to figure out the best possible spot to store that inventory so that we can downstream reduce the amount of travel time for picking or the amount of replenishing that we need to do. And we're going to talk, we have a slide and some things to talk about with dynamic slotting. But first, I want to show you just an example of just your basic slotting. We're going to go into the system to discuss, to show this. I have some screenshots here just to kind of highlight what we're going to see during that process. So as I mentioned earlier, during the receiving of goods, you're going to be entering things like lot, expiration, serial, quantity, the unit of measure, all these different factors of what you just received. You're going to be entering in, and when you press the receive button during that receiving flow, it's going to do its slotting. So you'll see a quick processing do not refresh on the screen for maybe about a second. And what it's doing in that moment is figuring out the best possible place to store the inventory we just declared we're receiving. And it's also printing out the put away label, which is going to include the license plate number in the form of a barcode. And that's going to guide you, the user, they're going to scan that barcode and guide them to the location that they're putting away the goods to. So really, JASCI's taken a lot of the thinking out of this. During the receiving, we're figuring out the slotting, and then the put away is just simply system directed. So to show you a live example of that, we're going to go into the system. On the full screen, I've already got a PO pulled up that I've done a little bit of partial receiving against. So we'll go ahead and finish it with this last line that's here for this SKU to be received. You can see I received a few different cases and pallets of just small quantities, just as samples and demonstrations in previous webinars. By the way, if you haven't seen our receiving webinar yet, that's the one that we did last week. I'd highly recommend checking that out. And you may remember some of these steps from that receiving demonstration. We didn't talk about as much about the slotting and put away from that, so that's why we're kind of going back a little bit and covering this because it is a key step in the slotting process is using the information that you've received against. So if we just grab this purchase order number and scan it or type it in, that's going to move us on to our next step where I can go ahead and scan my product. So I'll go ahead and scan my product. They will call out this damaged button. That's also going to include some slotting factors. Same thing with returns and reason codes. You can program these codes to select during the receiving process. That's going to kind of override the typical slotting logic and determine an exact location that you want it to go to. Maybe it needs, to get inspection or photos received, or maybe you want to put it to a damage area or return to vendor. So if you want to override what the system's typically doing for that SKU, you can use these buttons like the damage button or the reason button. But we're going to go ahead and scan this product now. This is a lot controlled product, so I'm just going to plug in our lot for this. And then it's going to bring us to our quantity and unit of measure entry. I only have two left to receive, so I'll just receive that amount. So we'll just say this is a one case on the pallet, simple small pallet with a quantity of two. That's all I have left to receive. We could also receive a case. We could receive this as eaches, and those are all going to respect their own slotting logic. Maybe you have your eaches going to certain locations in the warehouse. The system's going to recognize that unit of measure that we chose and only look at those areas that we store eaches. Same thing for cases and for pallets. We're also going to be looking at your replenishments that are out there. If there's active replenishments that are going to a location where you'd normally store this SKU, maybe we're not going to compete with that replenishment that's filling the location and we'll choose a different location. So as I hit this button that says receive, as we just showed on the PowerPoint before, it's going to say this processing do not refresh real quick, and it's going to go and find a location for us. Now, this one actually didn't find a location for me, which is why it's giving a message code up here. And I'll show you a little bit about these messages in just a moment. I was messing around with this one a little bit earlier. You can program these error messages to say really whatever you'd like them to say, and we'll see an example of that shortly. So this one's saying, hey, we didn't have anywhere that we could store that. So I know if I go to my putaways, it's going to show me that I have a putaway created, but I don't have a slotted location. I can still go and use my manual putaway to choose a location, but I want to recognize why it didn't find a location for me. Maybe that SKU, there's too many of them, or that in the locations already, and you don't have any available locations that you've set up for the slotting rules. And we'll talk about slotting rules in just a moment. Or maybe it's just like a product that you haven't stored before, so the system doesn't really know what to do with it, and you don't have any locations set up for those scenarios. Um, so let's go ahead and jump to another purchase order, and we'll do a quick receipt. Let's go ahead and we'll look at one here as an example. Okay, so we've got some items on here. You can see I've done a lot of partial receiving on this one as well. And I still have 8 of this product open. So let's go ahead and scan this purchase order. And we'll scan one of our products. Again, this is lot controlled, so we're going to put sample lot as just an example. And then again, we can receive this as eaches, cases, or pallets. So if I do a 2x2 pallet again and I hit receive, Let's see if this one slots. Maybe hopefully I have locations for the SKU. And as you can see, I didn't get an error message. So this is going to actually give us a slotted location. So if we go to our inbound putaway, and this is where I store my lookup for open putaways, there's multiple ways that you can access this info through the reporting tool, through Gravity, through this saved lookup, or you could even do a work lookup of the open status work type putaway. So we're just going to do our shortcut to the open putaways, and we're going to go to today. I have a lot of open putaways in my demo environment from all the different days that I've done these webinars and demos and such. But you could see that we have a few from today. And if we look at our most recent one here, we have our work control number, and we can go. Is this what? Oh, this is actually one from earlier. Let's go to this one right here. So we're going to see our product that we just received, the 1842. Um, and we could actually see the work zone it's slotted to. So this is a kind of a first thing that we'll see here. We see a license plate number, we see a work zone, and then down in the line details, we see the where it is right now in our PAW area and where it's set or system directed to go to. So this location is what that slotting logic determined from our receiving process. When it said processing do not refresh, it went and found this location as the most ideal spot to store this inventory. And also, it printed out our putaway label. So the putaway label is going to include a barcode that represents this license plate number because during the putaway, I'm simply going to scan this license plate number and be guided on where we want to put our inventory away to. Um, Now, a lot of things went into why it chose this location specifically, and we're going to talk a little bit about that next. Um, so let's go back to our presentation, and we're going to look at some of these things that we have here. So we talked about the static and the dynamic slotting, and there's a difference between them. Static, as I mentioned, is going to be a location is married to a SKU, or a SKU is married to a location. And dynamic is going to be looking at factors about what's going on in the warehouse, what's going on with your products, with your orders, inventory levels, etc. Um, and that's going to be considering those factors and determining the optimal location for us to store it rather than just a home location. Now, the advantage of dynamic slotting is because you're going to get optimization. So you're going to reduce the amount of travel time for your people doing the putaways and the picks. We're going to be making sure that we're balancing SKUs properly throughout the warehouse. It's going to reduce a lot of our customers might encounter a scenario where if they weren't using dynamic slotting or if they weren't using system directed slotting at all, maybe they had an issue before they came to us where they had SKUs all over the warehouse and like maybe one SKU had, five, six, seven locations when they really wanted just one or two locations for that SKU. And it ends up taking up too much space in the warehouse and they've got space issues. So space optimization is another big piece of this. We're considering the dimensional data of SKUs and figuring out the best possible place to store this. Now, dynamic slotting sounds complex, and it can be. You can have it leveraging factors about, say, ABC velocity, or maybe you want like products either together because they're often ordered together and picked together, or maybe you want like products apart because people will scan one SKU and then physically grab the other one because it looks almost identical. So, maybe you don't want those two SKUs right next to each other in a location or in a bin next to each other. You can also have days to expire, the lot and serial logic. So these types of things, a lot of times you may not want to mix serials in a location or mix lots or expirations in a location because you want to ensure that you're picking the proper one in respect to allocation or the FIFO. Also, as I mentioned, we're going to be leveraging dimensional data. So this can be the individual dimensions of the SKUs and the locations, the weight of the SKU and the weight tolerance of the location, and then also the cube dimension. So we're checking to make sure that each individual dimension is going to be able to fit along with the cube dims and the weight. And the last thing I'll mention here is, two last things I'll mention is that we have pick clean logic. So pick clean logic is going to be having to do a little bit with your replenishments too. It's basically declaring that we want to pick this location clean from this particular SKU that's there right now, and not re keep replenishing it and not keep putting away new inventory to it, because we're trying to clear that location out for a new SKU eventually. So pick clean is a really nice feature that JASCI has to help control, limiting the system direction to that location if you're anticipating new SKUs. And also, it's going to, during the allocation for orders, if we have a pick clean location for that SKU, we're going to favor that location so you can clear it out faster. Um, and the last thing I'll mention here, which is this one, this blue one, category management. You can work with something called location profiles in JASCI. And location profiles are going to be collections of locations that have similar attributes or behaviors, whether it's the dimensional data or how you slot to them or how you allocate from them, what types of products go there. And that's this category management with location profiles is something that I recommend to all of our customers to use. Whether you're, used to more of static slotting or maybe you're doing it completely manual. But the categories are the best way to kind of dip your toes into dynamic slotting because you can declare groups of locations where you want groups of products to go to. It's a very easy way to get some more efficiency without turning it into a science project. And I'll show an example of what I mean by that once we go back into the system. So I just wanted to go over a few of the attributes that go into dynamic slotting. You can use some of them, you can use all of them. And in that quick amount of time that it said processing, do not refresh, it was looking at these types of things, these types of attributes, looking at what we had entered and figured out the best possible place to store inventory in the warehouse. And then, as I mentioned, printing out that put away label. So we're going to talk about putaways in just a moment. Before I go into the putaway portion of this webinar, I'm going to explain what I was just talking about with the location profiles and the slotting categories in the software. And then if you have any questions on slotting, please feel free to put them into the chat or to reach out to us after this webinar. And we're always happy to discuss our slotting capabilities with you. There's a lot more than I had shown just in here in these six chunks. These are just six very commonly used areas of dynamic slotting. All right, so we're going to switch back to the software just to talk about those location profiles and slotting, and then we'll get into these putaways. Um, so the first thing I want to show you is the location profile maintenance. So here in the location profile maintenance, you can search a particular profile that you've set up. We also have groups of profiles if maybe you want to get pretty granular with maybe location profiles of 10, 20, 30 locations each, and you want to group those individual profiles together under one group name because they're similar but have slight differences. Or you can search by part of the location profile description. I'm not going to make one today or look up one that I have in here. I'm just going to hit the new button just to show you what goes into a location profile and the easy to use factor about these location profiles that aligns it to certain SKUs. So you can see you can create your naming convention, choose what group you want the profile to be in. You can determine a location height, width, and depth, weight capacity, height capacity, and number of pallets that fit there. All of this data, dimensional data and capacities, these are also at the individual location level. But location profiles are a great way to just kind of group locations together that are identical as far as their dimensions and then also some attributes, which you'll see down here. Like, are we allowing these to be allocated from or not? Or maybe these are just simply locations where you store bulk goods or you plan to do inventory moves, or maybe it's for damaged goods, things like that. You can also choose if you want to free the location once it's empty. This is also another important feature, which means you can temporarily tie the SKU to that location. As we receive something and put it away to that location, once we've picked it completely empty, it's going to free it up for a new SKU to go there. So similar to our pick clean logic, but for it to happen every single time for that location. The pick clean you can set to be temporary or not. You can also choose an amount of days that you'd want to free the location. So this is going to ensure that maybe, 100 days down the road when we hit new seasonal products, we're going to not be trying to put that same SKU there because it's one of our great pick locations. And as we approach the holidays, maybe we want stuff that's going to be ordered more around the holidays, as opposed to say like beach towels and things like that that people are ordering in the spring and the summer. So this is a way that you can choose if you're freeing locations or not, either when it's zero or after a certain amount of days. Now, this is a big one as well. It's about 50-50 with our customer base, multiple products in the same location. This would allow you to store multiple SKUs together in that same location, or even multiple lots and cereals and etc. Some people don't like to do that, so they'll often just set this to no. But if you do want multiple products allowed, as long as dimensionally and other attribute rule wise, it makes sense to store them together, then it'll actually put them in the same bin. And we're still doing those verifications during the pick and other processes of which location you're at, which exact SKU or license plate number of a inventory record that you're scanning. So you don't have a huge risk of picking the wrong product if you are using this setting. However, some people just for operational preference, they like to not store multiple SKUs in the same location. So I'd say it's about 50-50 or maybe 60-40 with our customer base of preferring it to be individual products per location. We also have storage types, so you can choose what we're using to figure out, how we want to store this. Are we factoring in the cube, or are we just purely going by like individual dimensions to make sure it works? So you have different storage types. Now, slotting, you can choose if this is going to be used in the system slotting, or maybe you still allow stuff to be put away there, but only manual, which would be with our put away new location flow. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, but this is going to be if you're using it for slotting or not. So I would recommend, yes, used in slotting if this is somewhere you intend to put items away to. Now, the last one I want to talk about here is going to be your slot product categories. So you can actually choose, and this I did this for a pharmaceutical and cold storage demonstration. So you see, I have four different slot product categories here. These slot product categories are associated directly with our product table, which I'm going to go to now. You'll see in our product maintenance. I'll just hit new on this one as well, and we'll scroll down. This is where we have all of our product attributes, product dimensions, barcodes, if it's lot or expiry or serial controlled, things like that. If you have ABC velocity, which by the way, JASCI can analyze what the true ABC velocity is of SKUs, and react to that. So you don't have to go in and constantly say, okay, this is an A now, this is a B now, this is a C now. We actually have programs that'll analyze that for you. You can see right here, this product slotting category. You can see the same options are available there. So each SKU you can associate with a category, and each location profile or group of locations you can also associate with one of those same slotting categories. And that, in my opinion, is the easiest way for a new customer on JASCI to kind of align their locations in the warehouse with what types of goods they want going there. It's not marrying the location to an exact SKU, it's marrying the location and locations to a group of SKUs that have similar reasons that you'd want to slot them there. So that's the last thing I wanted to mention about our slotting attributes, and now we're going to go into the put away portion. So I'm going to show a quick example of a put away. It's very basic, as you can see on the screen here. We have scan license plate number that's going to be in a barcode form on that put away label, and it's going to guide you to your location where you scan that location, and then you hit put away completed. So if I go onto my mobile device and I go into put away, you can also see a few other things that we have here, like cluster put away. In fact, cluster put away is going to be where you scan several license plate numbers for put away, and then you go on a put away path. This is going to be leveraging our cart logic within JASCI, which we plan to do a webinar on in the future, mostly about picking, because that's how carts are typically used. But our cluster put away will leverage a cart and how many cart slots you have, and then brings you on an optimal put path using our inventory sequence, and that's part of the locations. We also have pallet builds. Some of our customers will actually do the receiving by, say, eaches or cases, and then get all the individual labels for those inventories they received, but then they want to build them to a pallet and put that full pallet away. So we have a pallet build which can reslot to look at pallet locations as opposed to, if we were looking at eaches or cases for that initial receiving. We also have put away new location. So let's say you want to give either all your employees or certain employees a capability to put away to a new location. We have a workflow that allows them to be guided to the system directed location if you'd like to. But if they don't want to put it away there, they have the ability to override it and choose their own location. And then we also have, as we're going to show here in just a moment, our standard put away, which is simply going to be scanning the license plate number and being system directed to go put it away. So we're going to go to our open putaways and just grab one of these as a sample. We'll get one from today and we'll go and scan that license plate number. So if we scan our LPN, this is going to say, all right, here's your item that you're putting away and the location that we want to go to. So we're going to go to our 0503 E02. And you'll notice I'm not typing the bulk BLK. We actually give a prefix on our locations. You can scan that as well and it'll work. But your barcode, it doesn't have to have that area because you may change the area down the road of that location, and then you'd have to change the barcode. So we just take the individual location ID and kind of attach it to its area up top as a kind of a guide point. But really, all it needs to scan is the individual location ID. So let's go ahead and scan our location, and that's going to tell us that we've completed our put away. It's very simple. Now we've got our inventory in location. Yeah, we have some other things that we're going to talk about, I believe, in our next webinar on, receiving approvals. Um, we have ASN receiving approvals, PO receiving approvals, and often those can check to see if your inventory has been put away or not. And then also, when it comes to putaways, we're going to be tracking how long it took to complete the putaway. And we have reports like that look at the labor scores or even our dock to stock time, which is going to monitor how long between the point of receipt and the point of putaway it took for each putaway to occur, which is a great metric to look at when considering your rules about slotting, what's going to go where, also your labor performance. So that's the bulk of what we wanted to show here. I did want to show one more feature that I didn't really mention before, and I'm going to grab this LPN to show you this. We have a flow called cancel putaway. So cancel putaway is going to be if we recognize we made a mistake during the receiving, or for whatever reason we want to remove this putaway that we created and reopen the line on the receipt to re-receive. We have this cancel putaway where we can scan that license plate number and it's going to cancel the putaway that we performed or that we created. And as you can see, as I mentioned before, with those error messages or confirmation messages that display at the top of JASCI, those are completely configurable. So for today, since we have this webinar, I went ahead and put in that thanks for watching. Typically, it's going to say put away canceled, or if you're doing a put away, it's going to say put away completed. This is just one of the many reasons of that JASCI is able to be really tightly configured to your operational processes. Maybe you want it to display something very specific to the user when that action was performed. You have the flexibility to do that with JASCI's workflows. So again, that cancel put away reopened that line on the receipt that it was tied to, so we can re-perform that receipt correctly. Maybe we used the wrong unit of measure, or maybe we fat thumbed the wrong quantity in there, and we wanted to receive the true amount. This cancel put away allows you the flexibility for that. Typically, certain users will be assigned that cancel put away option. So just to review, we talked about our real time slotting in JASCI, the difference between static and dynamic slotting. We talked about the rules that dynamic slotting will consider. It's all nested in our receiving workflows, which you saw there. We also have other workflows like reslot, things like that that'll use our slotting logic as well. We showed a user-directed putaway. We talked about our putaway new location and also our cluster putaway logic. And then I showed an example of cancel putaway at the end there. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If you have any questions after watching this, if you're not watching live, feel free to reach out to JASCI. We're always happy to answer questions, to give demonstrations, or to even link you up with some of our customer base that is using slotting in a particular way. So that's all we have for today. I'll go ahead and stop sharing. James, anything else you wanted to close out with?
No, I think you did a great job there wrapping up, Joe. Like you
Thank
said,
you.
if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or, give us a bell afterwards, okay? And thanks for everyone's time. Enjoy
Thanks,
the
everyone. Take
weekend.
care. Have a great weekend.